3, 2, 1. What's going on, everyone? You're watching Ash on Comics. My name is Ash, and here's today's comic, House of X, number 2. Joining me, as always, Stan the Man. Good to see you, Stan. Looks like you got a drink. Oh, what do you got here? Iced tea? Good man. And Forky, our trusty intern sidekick, all around joy maker. This guy brings a smile to our face and reminds us what is and what isn't trash. I'm also got some gummy worms, the best candy in the world, / gummy bears. I get the Black Forest. Black Forest, I think, is the best, and I chill them in the fridge. You should try it sometime. It brings out the flavor. I read this online. I was like, I don't see how that would work, but it worked. So I'm going to eat these gummy worms. I'm going to read House of X. I haven't even read this yet. I'm going to sit down and read it, see what I think, and I'll get back to you. All right. I finished the book. Finished my gummy worms. I have to say, this is a big step up from the previous issues. And I'm counting Powers of X as part of this. Like, this is really the third issue of one story. It's really stupid that they broke this into 2 miniseries. Especially since you're not supposed to read them. You're supposed to read them in this weird order. Like, no, you should be reading issue number 2 of this. This issue is number 2. This should follow issue number 1. You should go issue number 1 of this story, and then issue number 1 of a different series, then back to issue number 2. That's stupid. If you need to do this bullshit of having multiple number 1s and exploiting the fans, then just do 6 issues of House of X, end it, and then do 6 issues of Powers of X, end it, and then start. It still would be a ripoff to fans. It'd still be stupid, but at least it would make some sense. What are you going to do when you bind this in the trade? Is it going to be like volume 1 and you're going to have half of each? You see what I'm saying? This is nonsense. There's no other reason to do what they're doing than to rip you off. So, we're now $17 into this fiasco. And finally, the story is beginning to start. $17 in. The story is beginning to start. Let's get into it. Yep. The big white page, full page spreads are back. They're not going to go away, I'm sure, with one little paragraph of text. Remember, this comic is $4.99. $4.99. But Ash, it's 32 pages. It's thicker than a normal comic book. Yeah, it's 32 pages because they put this white pages of bullshit in here. I get it. This is kind of some little flavor. You get a little, if you could find it in you to survive, if you are worthy, then I will make you into something more than them. Something eternal. Apocalypse. Now that immediately made me think when I was reading this, like, oh shit. Are they going to tie the XMen into the Eternals? Are they going to tie mutants? Are we going to find out that Eternals come from mutants? That would be fucking wicked. Especially since Marvel's now trying to push the Eternals in the MCU and stuff and actually make Eternals relevant. That could be super wicked. So it starts off, and it's a lot of exposition. But it's okay. It's telling you a story. When she was 13 years old, Moira fell ill. Her fever was high, unnaturally so, and the doctor's prognosis was not hopeful. The next day, almost miraculously, she was fine, better than ever, right as rain. Years later, she would marry, become a school teacher, and have 3 children, 2 boys, Callum and Dean, and 1 girl, Abigail. Pause. Already, if you are an X-Men fan, you hear the record scratch, and you're like, what? She didn't have 2 boys and a girl? Who are these kids? If you're not an X-Men fan, if you didn't read that history, you might just be like skimming over. It doesn't matter. This is not it's crucial to the story, but not crucial at this point in the story, and all will make sense. So whether you know this or not, if you go, oh wait, this doesn't make sense, it will. And if you just skip past this because it didn't matter, that doesn't matter because it will be explained later, and maybe this is something you could discover on your own. You'll see. By the way, spoilers ahead. They would in turn have 8 children of their own, and to Moira's great joy, once every year the extended family would return home. Moira eventually died at the age of 74 when she passed peacefully in her sleep. It was a good life, a human life. Predictably, mostly pleasant and not ordinary at all. Not extraordinary at all. So, this starts off and you're like, As an old school X-Men fan, this had me kind of hooked, going, what is going on? Especially since I've read the previous stories. Moira's second life, began in utero. It was the womb birth of a fully sentient being who had a perfect recollection of her prior life. And now we see a fully aged, adult Moira McTaggart. Continuing the narration, you would think being totally aware and trapped inside your mother would lend itself to madness. But the rearing of children, it seems, comes with a certain amount of bliss baked in. Some kind of embryonically induced neuroleptic, Zen via biology. And the truth is, I've never been happier. For your mother is safe, your mother is home. And the world is out there. It's the world out there that makes you lose your mind. So then it continues. Shortly after birth, blah, 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 Moira, blah, blah. It goes on. And so here we find out that Moira is a very special kind of mutant with a very unusual power. She has the power to rebirth or reincarnate herself. However, she always reincarnates as Moira McTaggart for whatever reason. Kind of weird. But also, this is the very confusing part of this storyline. When she reincarnates, the narrative paints a picture as if she dies, and then she comes back and she's reborn, and she has the memories of her past life. The part that it doesn't explain, and it doesn't even really seem to address, and if you took something out of here, if I missed something in the storyline that you understood, by all means, please point it out in the comments below. I'm not here to tell you I am the most advanced, I have pretty decent reading comprehension skills, I believe, but anyone can miss anything. Sometimes you can misinterpret things. I'm fully aware that I could do so. I'm not trying to promote that I fully understand this story. No. I believe I understand enough, and I'm also admitting where I'm confused. In this part, I'm confused. So Moira reincarnates. But when she reincarnates, it's like time goes back. She reincarnates at the time of her original birth. So, it's almost as if the time of conception, when she's born, like so her mom and, when the sperm and the egg meet and she's conceived, the soul or the identity of that embryo that would become Moira McTaggart picks up from where the previous life left off. And then when Moira dies, somehow it transfers back into time, and that conception is now changed. Does that make sense? That's really weird. And this, like I said, the story. So Moira has had multiple lives, and we're going to go. And this bothers me. Okay, so remember, $4.99 for this book. 2-page spread of the credits, followed by a full-page spread of a wall of text, followed by a full-page spread of a wall of text. I'm not buying a book. I'm buying a comic. Okay? Yes, I know it's called a comic book. You don't buy comic books for pages of prose. This is not, I don't want to say it's not acceptable. This is cheap. Why is that cheap? Well, look at this nothing but narrative exposition here. or expository narrative, I should say. It's just, and then it gets here and it continues that. In her early years, Moira had to be careful not to let on what she really was. She had to hide what she was doing, what was going on in her mind that was older than the humans who made her. She knew the pride that had for her special little girl would quickly turn into fear, and she pulled back. If she pulled back the curtain too far, but try as she might, it was impossible to completely conceal how different she was. Blah 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 blah. Right. So it's doing all the same stuff as here, which you're getting some pictures, and this is almost as like, we have 2 pages of things the artist can't, so just draw in the, it's like, you see what I'm saying? Just draw in the narrative balloons with no art, but still charge $4.99. So continues on. Moira picks back up. Which you think would be amazing. Who wouldn't want to fix all the mistakes that you've made in the past? Then again, that was before I knew what the observer effect was, and that simply by existing and watching, I was already changing everything. And what seemed to be a gift, something of a blessing, wasn't a blessing at all. It was a curse. Meeting the love of your life already, knowing every flaw they possess, along with the knowledge that they will never change, destroyed any chance of Moira recreating what she had in her first life. Familiarity breeds contempt, and her once husband could see it in her eyes. There would be no family for Moira in this life. No one to love, no one to be loved by. No children in the yard playing and laughing. This frame made me dislike Moira. Really. And it makes me question Jonathan Hickman's worldview. So, according to the author, if you know someone already and you know their flaws and all these things, you can't love them. So love is you fall in love with someone before you know how fucked up of a person they are and everything. And I guess when you eventually find out, it's too late and you're stuck in marriage. But now that you know, you don't love this person, you can't fall in love with them because you know their flaws. Like, that is an utterly ridiculous worldly view of love, which isn't love at all. Love is a conscious choice to accept someone for their flaws, to love people and care for them despite their flaws, to embrace those flaws, you know. And anyone who's a parent understands this. You don't just go, oh, my kids got all these flaws, so fuck them, and vice versa. You grow up, my parents had all sorts of crazy, heinous flaws. Doesn't make me not love them. But for some reason, in modern society, we preach this bullshit message. Oh, you're not perfect, whatever, fuck you. That drove me. It made me really not think of Moira as a good person. And here's the thing. You go, Ash, well, that's just realistic, you know. Yes, okay. But Moira is a role model. She's a fictitious character in a book of heroes. Do you understand? There's the difference between being a realistic. You and I don't have to stand for anything. We should, but we're not fictitious characters. We're not being written by someone to send a positive message and be a role model. We are just living our lives and getting through. Moira is not. She's an imaginary character. She should be written as better than that. She's a hero. And that's not what heroes do. But I digress. So it talks about how Moira discovered Charles Xavier in one of her lives, and she was enthralled, you know, and he reveals himself, my name is Charles Xavier, and I'm a mutant. And you can see here, she's like, ooh. His words echoed in her ears and took root in her heart. Moira knew then that she might be a mutant too, and that she had to talk with this man and find out for sure. So Moira jumped on the first flight she could find to America and died when her plane crashed into the ocean. It's like, whoa, damn. So this is the part where I was getting confused. In Moira's third life, she aggressively dove into a life of science. She realigned her areas of interest to focus on it, blah, blah, blah. And so at this point, I'm sitting here going confused. Third life. In each life, she reached at least year 20 years old, 30 years old maybe, 40. You know, in the first life, she died, but she didn't know about Charles. So the next 2 lives, I'm like, Charles is not that old. Like, how is she reincarnating and Charles is still around? But that's what I said. I kind of fast forward and gave you my take of how her reincarnation goes back in time. Hickman promised there wasn't time travel. He lied. It's not Terminator time travel, direct, I'm in a time machine, go back or whatever, but it is time travel. Her essence. Anyways. So, she has a run-in with Mystique and Destiny of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and they are freaking evil. Credit Jonathan Hickman for actually finally portraying these evil characters as evil. I've always hated Mystique running around with the X-Men being like, oh, I'm with you guys. Like, you are a murderer, psychopath. You are a butcher. You should not be running around with the X-Men, and anyone who writes X-Men where Mystique is a part of them just doesn't understand. And of course, with the movies, Ash, exactly. The movies, I believe, are the reason why X-Men are such shit to begin with, because Fox got X-Men so wrong for so long, and now we've grown up a whole new generation of writers and so forth in comics who believe that's what X-Men is like. They go, it's all the movies. So what happens is they run in, and she's captured. I can see the world bending around her, the eddies of change rippling out. But she is just an absence, a hole where there shouldn't be one. This is Destiny. A mutant who is invisible to other mutants. It's a defense mechanism of a sort, I suppose, but not much good once you know what you're looking for. Is she looking at me now, Raven? She is, and she doesn't look happy. Look at all the dead bodies around. Yes, well, I suppose we've given her good reason. Then again, we were acting with cause. Listen to me, child. My mutant name is Destiny, and I have the power to see the future. Which is tricky with someone like you, since your mutant power is reincarnation. Not exactly. It's not how reincarnation works. But I've already said all that. One might think that would be impossible, seeing the future of someone who potentially has limitless, unending one. But here I am, child. See me. You killed all my friends. Everyone. So if you're going to kill me, then just kill me and get it over with. Oh, we're going to do that. But it doesn't do much good if we just have to do it all over again next time. Now listen closely. Destiny has a word for you. Such a gift, knowledge. And yet here you are, using it to betray your kind. And she's like, it's a disease, what we are. So Moira in this timeline has cured the mutant gene. And Destiny's warned her, and she's like, well, how do you think you're going to stop me? I am much older than you are. My powers will have manifested full of the knowledge of what we have done. If you, once again, try to do this evil work against our people, like today, I will see the potential outcome of it and find you again. And if you try to kill me before I kill you, I will see my end coming and prevent it. You see, Moira, we are joined together now, you and I. You will know that I am out there waiting for this version of you. And you, knowing that, have a choice. Change or die. Help your people, or I will annihilate you in all your lives to come. She has this stubborn look. I think she's still on the fence and needs a bit more encouragement. Very well, here it is. And so she tells them sees their lives, and she's like, oh, I only see 10 lives, maybe 11, but that's it. And she's like, that's not possible. And then she explains, look, if you die as a kid before your mutant gene manifests, your power doesn't kick in and you die for real. And that's where she's like, so the question is, are you going to embrace? And she's still kind of on the fence. Let's find out. I don't want to die like this. Dying like this is what a life poorly lived gets you. Pyro? Yes, mother. Burn her. And slowly, so she doesn't forget how dying like this feels. And then they roast her alive. Now remember, Pyro is advertised to be in one of the upcoming X-Men books, along with Mystique. I can't remember if Mystique is, but this guy just burned a woman alive. One of the heroes of the X-Men is going to be a part of the X-Men. Okay, I digress. That's not part of this book. Moira's fourth life began with urgency. So this whole book goes like that. It's just telling the many lives of Moira McTaggart. Talk about how she fell in love with Charles Xavier and saw through fell in love so much so that she stood by his side for the rest of their days, through the gifted years, through the time of hate and fear, through the lost decade, until the very end. Then, as Destiny had promised, the humans and their extinction machines came for them and all the children. So this, in one page, Hickman cleverly wipes the slate clean. How? By Moira McTaggart. All of this stuff, all these histories of the X-Men have all been, essentially as I'm taking it, and again, if you have a different take, please, comments below, as I'm understanding this, are all been essentially various points of Moira's lives. Now, these are one life of Moira, but you can see from the various illustrations, we're going to go forward even more. And the next life, she warns Xavier, and we see the scene from Powers of X. Remember? Where she's like, scan my mind. And Charles's eyes open. And he creates the Legion of Mutants. But once again, the Sentinels come. Bolivar Trask's AI machines. So in her next life, she incarnates as an assassin and kills all the Trask family dead. Just wipes them out. But it doesn't matter, because she realized that they talk about that AI is a discovery, not an invention. It's like fire, and that someone else would have discovered it if not Bolivar Trask. The mutants, the machines come alive. Extinction happens anyway. So in her eighth life, she decides Xavier's way may be wrong, and she goes to Magneto. Magneto starts a war, tries to fight, but the X-Men and the Avengers end up thwarting him. Finally, in her ninth life, she just aligns with Apocalypse. Some have thought him a monster, some called him evil, but to Moira, Apocalypse was simply the only solution that she had not tried. And Apocalypse has his war, and he has the whole thing. And again, my interpretation of this is that all of these lives that you're seeing here are essentially, like all the different stories you've seen, like the War of Apocalypse. I kind of take it that the Apocalypse future where Nathan Summers comes from is like this future. All the different stories of X-Men and the different things that don't seem to fit in continuity right, or things went astray, Hickman cleverly ties it all together and says, well, those were just one of the different realities that Moira had created. You have to pick essentially which was which, but he shows you all of them. And now you can kind of understand, and in your back of your mind, you can go, if you go back and read X-Men 10 years ago versus X-Men 20 years ago versus X-Men maybe 30 years ago, those could all be fitting in the different time aspect of Moira McTaggart's existence. And it's a fantastically clever way to tie all this together and make it make sense. And to also, if you're like me, and Doc, I don't know if you're watching, like Doc, and you're just a purist with X-Men, and you love the Claremont era, and you hate everything that's been ruined since. It's not ruined anymore. It's not ruined anymore. It's that in itself makes this book worth it to me. But that may not be for you. You may not be one of these diehard X-Men fans. And here we get back to the scene. So we've seen all the different lives. It says, and then, after all the lives lost, after the end of all the wars, armed with the knowledge that all of the old ways and all the old ways of thinking would never be enough to save her people, she decided to try something truly revolutionary. And in Moira's 10th life, she decided she and Charles Xavier would break all the rules. And then we get the scene that we saw before in Powers of X. And I was wondering why you're sitting here, blah, blah, blah. I'm smiling because I had recently had a dream. Well, here's the thing, Charles. It's not a dream if it's real. I'm sorry, do we know each other? Oh, yes, we go back quite a ways. This scene did not make sense in the last book, but now it does completely. Why don't you read my mind, Charles? Read my mind and see. Oh. I am here. I have always been here. Moira X. Moira the 10th. Interesting play on the X's again. The many lives of Moira X. So, or Moira 10. That's probably the right way to say it. So again, full page. So 3 pages. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages. Remember, it's a 32-page comic. It's now less than a 20-page comic for $4.99. So keep this in mind. But you get to see all the different time strands. The first Life 1 and where it goes. And then different highlight points of Moira's life. This black line, I believe, to be the real line, because here, somewhere along here, it shows Moira gives birth to Proteus. And that's the Chris Claremont era. We know Proteus exists in the Chris Claremont. So the weird thing is you get to see, here's all the different deaths where Moira met her end. But the last 2 lives, very interesting. The Apocalypse War begins, the year 42. And these little dashes are like no history, like nothing happening. Like up here we see these dashes because she was in a coma until she finally died. So here something's happening or nothing. There's no record of history. We don't know. It's missing. And it just ends off the page. And then down here the same thing. Year 52, House of X. So our story starts right here on this bottom line. And then look. The dashes, House of X number 2. So, what we just read is these dotted lines. And then it's going to go forward. And that is, here's some more full pages. 8, what is it, 8, 9, 10? 10. There's at least 15 pages of these full page and a 32-page book. So, whoo, it's a long video. This is the best of the books so far. And each one has gotten better. House of X was the worst, then Powers of X. Yes, I know it's 10. And then House of X number 2. In my opinion, I've enjoyed them in that order, least to best. I think it's because the story is starting to come together somewhat. I'm a little apprehensive on the fence. I love the cleverness of what Hickman's doing here. I love how he's found a way to take all the previous X-Men histories and all the comic continuity nonsense. It's like a Crisis on Infinite X. And he's just like, we're just wiping it all, and it's really, not wiping it, but making it all make sense, and why some continuities didn't fit with other continuities, and why some X-Men, you're like, why does this X-Men isn't my X-Men? This is great. Now you know why. It was a different, Moira had messed that timeline up. And so now you may not like those. I mean, it's not going to make you go back and want to read those comics, but now you can at least appreciate that was a fucked up era of X-Men, and it was all caused by Moira. And now Hickman has set the stage for Moira 10 is his version of X-Men going forward. And that is what is needed. You cannot grab onto the past, right? Chris Claremont was a visionary. X-Men was what it was because of Chris Claremont. Chris Claremont wasn't what he was because of X-Men. X-Men was really, I hate to say this and some people are going to disagree, but X-Men was nothing really before Chris Claremont. It was just another team book of weirdos who were called the X-Men because they had extraordinary powers. That was how Stan Lee explained it. It wasn't because of the mutant gene and all this stuff. All this great lore and these amazing characters and this massive saga, soap opera, all this was Chris Claremont. Now, he did build on the blocks of other greats. He didn't just come up with it all by himself, but He's the reason why X-Men is known today. It's like Star Wars. Star Wars never would have been without George Lucas. He had a vision, he made it his way, and no one can recreate because no one sees the world like George Lucas. No one thinks like he does. So you can have people that try to emulate it, and we see how that works, right? It just doesn't work. X-Men is the same way. You can try to emulate Chris Claremont all day long. You're not going to do it. It just because he's a unique writer. There's very few people that even approach comics the way that he did. So in my mind, the only real way that X-Men has a chance to succeed is what Hickman is doing right now. And just by saying, look, here's all these pasts. They were all there. You can accept the ones you like, whatever. I'm now setting the stage for my vision, what I'm going to bring to the table. And maybe it's going to be something I don't like. Maybe it's going to be something I do like. But I do respect that that's the way that it has to go forward. And he's going to earn his audience or vice versa based on merit. I have a lot of skepticism based on things that I've seen ahead with these other books. That has no bearing on this particular book, which was what I'm talking about. The art, again, Pepe Larraz, is beautiful to look at. He's got a lot to learn when it comes to sequential storytelling, but that didn't really apply here because it was so much exposition that it just had to have him showing, like show a picture of Moira kneeling before Apocalypse, or Magneto. It didn't have to be a cinematic. It didn't have to tell a story visually. It just had to illustrate the exposition. And that allowed him to shine a lot more. We'll have to see when it goes to a more traditional narrative if that changes. But the coloring is beautiful. The illustration, it's great to look at. And this is a solid thumbs up. This is I'm shocked, 4-star book. Even though it's confusing, the cleverness of it all, the mind fuck of it, of trying to bend your head about Moira's reality in this looping time, it kind of rings a little bit of true about the Matrix. And you're going to say, Matrix. It's not the whole virtual reality aspect of it, but in the Matrix was a looping time. If you remember the character of the Oracle in the Matrix, she had been in iteration after iteration after iteration after iteration of the Matrix. Moira is like that in reality. Reality is a reiteration because of her power. And it's really even hard to explain, but it reminded me of that. And I'm kind of on for the ride. I really want to see the ingenuity of this story unfold and what's it all mean. So bravo. I am going to give this a 4 stars, shockingly, because the first 2 I was really on the fence with. They're okay. They're not bad, but they weren't showing the promise that this one does. So this is a long video. I'm going to wrap it up. Stan, it's dark. Stan, why is it so dark? There we go. Spotlight for Stan. And Forky, we thank you for watching the show. Put your comments below. I'll see you next time. Bye.